Great. My name's Joan Woodard, and I'm the hearing examiner this evening. The purpose of this hearing is to allow me to receive evidence and testimony on the matters that are pending. I make a recommendation only to the county commissioners. I do not make the final decision. I will be submitting my recommendation to staff within 2 weeks of this evening's hearing. The application will then be scheduled for deliberations before the county commissioners. If you wish to give testimony, I need you to fill out one of the sheets on the side. And when you come to the podium, please give us your name and address for the record before you begin your testimony. First, staff will introduce the application, then we will hear from the applicant. After the applicant's testimony, we will then get into the public comment sheets. We'll hear from those who are in favor, then those who are neutral, and then those opposed. The public not speaking will be read into the record. We will then give the applicant and or their representative an opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony stated into the record from the public before we close the public hearing. After that point, we will receive no more testimony. The time limits are 30 minutes for the applicant's presentation, 5 minutes for public testimony, and 15 minutes for applicant rebuttal. I would ask that you direct all of your testimony to me and not to the audience. Are there any questions regarding these proceedings? Not seeing any.
I had one. My name is Cora Whitney. I'm on Zoom.
Your name again, please?
Cora Whitney.
Okay.
I'm not able to fill out one of the forms, but I would like to speak.
That's fine. We'll call on anybody who's on Zoom who wishes to speak as we go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for letting us know, though. Okay, you ready, Zach?
I am. Good evening. Planner Zach Trevino for the record. Presenting case number CUP 20-0009. This is a request by New Life Community Church and Classical Christian Academy for the expansion of a private school that is located on a parcel of 10 acres in size in the agricultural zone. Now, the project site is located approximately equidistant from the cities of Rathdrum, Hayden, and Post Falls in the shared tier of the coordinated area of city impact. It's along Hayden Avenue, and the parcel currently contains a church called New Life Church. That church is used for a place of worship and as a school, and the school is called Classical Christian Academy. Both uses are in that single building on site, and it is along a public road with entrances onto Hayden Avenue, 1, 2, and 3 in its current configuration. This building is approximately 36,000 square feet, and it was established initially in 1993 and then subsequently expanded through a series of building permits. Importantly, at that time when it was originally established, the use of a church was permitted of right in the agricultural zone. Now it requires a conditional use permit, so the use is currently non-conforming. So an expansion of that use requires a conditional use permit. What the applicant is proposing to do specifically is add up to 4 portable classroom buildings south of the existing building to accommodate additional space for the private school, which operates Monday through Friday. As you can see in this aerial, there is a substantial portion of the parcel that is taken up with a parking lot that is used for a church service, which has approximately 400 individuals at maximum on Sundays. And then for the school, there's approximately 250 individuals Monday through Friday. No overlap between the uses. As you can see, there's also an emergency access here in the southeast corner of the parcel off of Meyer Road. So those are the existing conditions. As mentioned, it's in the agricultural zone. There is a rural parcel across Hayden Avenue, but most of the parcels in the area are either agricultural or rural. Even though it is in the shared tier of the area of city impact, it is approximately 3/4 of a mile away from the nearest city limits. That's the city of Hayden to the east. And then it's also in the transitional land use designation for the comprehensive plan. And the purpose of that is really to reserve land for future annexation. It's not immediately adjacent to cities, that would be the border designation, but it's looking at long-term growth of our urban areas. Staff feels that the nature of the existing use and the proposed expansion would not conflict with that goal of the comprehensive plan, because what is being proposed would not affect the existing water and sewer situation, and also would not increase the number of people on the site, so no traffic impacts and that sort of thing. And due to the aforementioned distance from this parcel to the existing city limits, it may be a while yet before this parcel were to be annexed, if ever. This is an aerial view of the neighborhood that shows the general characteristics. It is mostly residential. Most of the parcels are 5 or 10 acres, which is consistent with the minimum lot size for both the agricultural and rural zones. As you can see, the building is approximately 600 feet from the nearest residence here, which is located just to the east, and then there are some residences on this adjacent parcel. It's worth noting that the parcel to the south, which is this parcel, and the parcel to the west are also owned by New Life Community Church, although they are not associated with this request. You may recall that this came before you initially in April. There was no hearing at that time. It was postponed due to an identified violation on this parcel that the applicant has since been working to resolve. Because they've been making progress and working with the building division on that, we have scheduled it, and now it comes before you again. But that's some context for the area. Now, this is the site plan proposed by the applicant, and really this is the focus down here near the southern property line. Initially, they want to establish 3 portable classroom buildings, approximately 1,792 square feet each. And the reason they want to do this is because the existing school operates out of a portion of the church building, and they're constrained in terms of space. The classrooms are very close to each other. Some of them are divided by partition walls. And so for noise purposes and for allowing a better learning environment, the applicant is intending on expanding this. Now, the parcel is served by an individual well located just east of this existing building. Some of the concerns that have been raised by members of the public related to water service, because this parcel is located in the Morrison Estates Homeowners Association, which has a water system. And this parcel does maintain a connection to that system for emergency use, but does not utilize it on a day-to-day basis. That is, the water that is used is from this well. It's on a septic system. There is no public sewer system available in this location. Panhandle Health was consulted, and they did determine that they're operating at or near capacity. And so one of the suggested conditions, if this were to be approved, is that the applicant be limited to the capacity proposed in the narrative. This circulation that's depicted on the site plan will have to be modified somewhat, because Post Falls Highway District reviewed this, and they did determine that one of these approaches could not be permitted. The applicant has obtained approach permits for this middle approach and this eastern approach, but not this western approach, which will have to be eliminated. And as part of that analysis, a traffic impact study was prepared. This bottom right picture may help visualize the approach here. This is the easternmost approach facing west. The top right photo shows the proposed location of the modular classroom buildings in this gravel area here, and the bottom left also shows that facing east. This bottom left photo also shows that there is some vegetation screening along the southern and eastern sides, but that will need to be enhanced, and that is one of the recommended conditions related to buffering requirements. Because this is an expansion of a non-conforming use, it can be subject to our current performance standards for things like landscaping and parking, and that is what we're recommending to increase its compatibility with the surrounding uses if this is approved. And the bottom left, or the top left, is just an overview of the parking lot with the church building in the background, just showing the general characteristics. This is taken approximately from Hayden Avenue. And so I've talked about some of the agencies, but it is important to note that we did consult all the agencies with jurisdiction. Post Falls Highway District, in addition to that approach, they did request that a traffic impact study be prepared, which the applicant proceeded to do. The project was actually on hold near the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 so that they could complete that analysis. The district did review that analysis and determined that the use would be appropriate. However, they did request that the analysis be repeated again in 5 years, and that is one of the recommended conditions, adopting Post Falls Highway District's recommendation there. Panhandle Health District is not requiring anything, although one of the conditions does specifically state that if any expansion were to occur, not only would they have to get approval from Kootenai County, but of course Panhandle Health District would have to review it to see if such an expansion were even possible with the existing system. The building division will have to review these portables to make sure that accessibility requirements can be met. The fire district specified some general requirements related to safety, such as fire extinguishers and that sort of thing. Importantly, all 3 cities for the shared tier of the ACI, Rathdrum, Hayden, and Post Falls, were consulted. None of them had any objection. 2 of them actually did not have comment. Post Falls did note that the lack of sewer system in the area, but they did state that they were neutral to the request. And then finally, the Idaho Department of Water Resources was consulted related to the water provision, and they determined that as long as the applicant does not exceed the water usage that they are at, and they actually specified 2,500 gallons per day as being a threshold beyond which further permitting would be required. And so based on that effort of reaching out to agencies over the span of 2020 and 2021, staff does believe that the applicant has demonstrated that they can meet all agency requirements. Now, as far as the public comment goes, we did receive significant opposition to this request, and that included a wide range of concerns. Some of those concerns related to traffic, noise, water usage, sewage. A lot of them did cite the existing water association and concerns about the existing well situation. And a lot of them also were concerned with quality of life. As it is a predominantly residential area, some of those concerns cited a desire to keep that residential character, and were concerned that this facility would somehow inhibit that residential character. Now, staff definitely thinks that those are thoughtful concerns and appreciates the engagement. It is important to note that any future expansion beyond what is being proposed would require review and a permitting process similar to this one, and would have to be evaluated at that time. If this were to be approved, it would not indicate that future expansion or future non-commercial uses on adjacent or non-residential uses on adjacent parcels would be approved. So that is one thing that staff has kept in mind in writing the analysis. And one additional response in opposition was received after the deadline for the staff report, so it's not reflected in what you read. It was in opposition and cited similar concerns, including related to the existing CCNRs for the neighborhood. Staff has taken these things into consideration, and many of the conditions of approval that are recommended reflect public concerns. And those relate to things like lighting, making sure that lighting is obstructed and contained on site, buffering and landscaping, enhancing the buffer not only along Hayden Avenue, but also the surrounding parcel sides to try to obscure the use from the adjacent residential uses as much as possible. And similarly, making sure that the capacity is limited to what is being proposed by the applicant to ensure that there isn't unforeseen impacts with traffic or water or sewer. One notable aspect of this is that this request does provide an opportunity for us to impose conditions that would potentially increase the compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. And one example of that is with the approaches. 3 approaches on Hayden Avenue are being consolidated into 2. That sort of thing is one reason why staff feels like this is an appropriate request. Additionally, as mentioned, it does seem to be consistent with the comprehensive plan designation. And so staff feels that this request should be approved. I do stand for any questions that you have, and I'm happy to go into further detail if you'd find it helpful.
I don't have anything right now. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
We will hear from the applicant. First on the top of the pack is Scott Dorman? A P. Poorman.
Madam Chairman, just a quick bit of information for everyone tonight. We have a new microphone system. It's omnidirectional. It should actually work just from the lectern. You should be able to hear me right now just fine. So you don't need to pick it up, you don't need to move it, it's on, it's ready to go.
Thank you.
You can move it all around.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Examiner. I'm Scott Portman. I'm the attorney for the applicants, and it is my privilege to represent them in tonight's hearing. My address is 320 East Nider Avenue, Suite 204, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I want to start by complimenting staff on their report and single out Zach for being helpful to me in helping me get up to speed on this and supplying information. I do appreciate the hard work, and I know how busy staff is, and I think they did an excellent job on this one. I'd like to start by just emphasizing what this application is and what it is not, because I think there's some confusion about what the applicants are actually requesting and what is in fact changing. So as you're, I'm sure, well aware, there is an existing use, and it's been there since about 1993. The church building and the associated improvements have existed for over 25 years. That's a well-established use that I think predates most of the surrounding residential uses. The neighborhood has grown up around the church facility, and of course, you know, the church has tried to be and still wants to be a good neighbor to the neighborhood. The existing use includes a K through 12 school, but the church building wasn't built for that purpose. It was built to be a place of worship, not necessarily a school facility. So they've been putting a round peg into a square hole and are hoping through this application to have facilities that are purpose for school use. The existing church facility on a weekly basis may have 300 to 400 parishioners with all of the associated traffic and water use and wastewater generation that comes from that on any typical Sunday. The school currently has, I'm told, about 250 students, so fewer than what a Sunday brings. A lot less traffic generated because not all 250 students are bringing their own cars. In fact, most of them are delivered. So yeah, there will be no increase in enrollment just because or if these classroom buildings are permitted. It is simply to move the existing students from the current building to better facilities that will accommodate the school and teaching environment. If these classrooms are added, of course, that will allow additional capacity to the school, and it may grow in the future. It may not. We don't know. I think Yogi Berra said prediction is hard, especially if you're talking about the future. And I think growth in our county is happening right now, and certainly a percentage of the existing or the current growth may decide to send their kids to school at Classical Christian Academy. We hope they do, and they'll have the ability to absorb those new students if that happens. But, Madam Hearing Examiner, there is no secret plan to double enrollment if this CUP gets approved. There's not another 250 students waiting in the wings to come in if this COP is approved. This is just prudent planning for the future. That's what the applicants are trying to do. So, this application is not to change the nature of the existing use of the property, a use that has existed for a number of years. This application, if it's permitted, will just increase some square footage of classroom space for the existing students and teachers and for the school use that's been in use, been in existence for some time. If I could get the aerial back up, I think I like number 5. That was pretty slick. Okay. Just like to highlight a few features of the application. Of course, you can see that this is a rural area with the church there in the center and a lot of open space around it. Certainly the nearest residence being to the east, is extremely well buffered. That's an amazing landscape that person has. I've been admiring it for about 20 years as I drive up and down Hayden Avenue. The church, as Zach mentioned, owns the property to the south and to the west. You've got vacant land to the north, which I believe has or is pending for subdivision, so there may be some development to the north, which will result in improvements to Hayden Avenue, undoubtedly. This residential property is owned by the church. They used to own the next 5 acres to the west. They sold that parcel, and when they sold it, they reserved this access road. So they have an easement to use that road to get out to Meyer. The church is on an approved, Panhandle Health District approved septic system. In fact, the one correction to the staff report is there are 2 septic systems. And Zach, if I could get that PhD exhibit. The original church building was just a square, and then they added on a few years later to expand the building. And when they did that, the health district made them install a second septic tank and drain field system. So if you keep scrolling down, it's the next page, or the next page. Yeah, so yeah, this is the existing with Hayden Avenue here to the left. When they added that sort of T there, they had to put this in. And that's in the ground. It's not just a permit, it's there. So they basically have double the septic disposal capacity, I think, of what's reflected in the staff report. They're nowhere near capacity at this point. As staff mentioned, water supplied by private well. They are in the Morrison Estates Water Association's boundary, but they're not using water from that association. I think they have a connection for emergency purposes, but they are not drawing water from that on a daily basis. In fact, I don't think they've ever drawn water from that, but one of the other guys can address that for you. I know there's been objections raised by and on behalf of Morrison Estates. I'll address those a little bit later when I get to the public comments. Highway District has recommendations for conditions that the applicants are happy to comply with. We're going to talk to the Highway District about maybe swapping that western approach, keeping that one and getting rid of the residential approach that's a little just right next to it. But that's a conversation we'll have with the Highway District, and whatever they decide, we'll live with it. This application, again, is not going to increase traffic. Traffic is increasing, as everybody knows that lives here and has lived here for any period of time. It's increasing because our population is increasing. But the school's not going to bring more traffic than it has in the past few years, and certainly less than what the church generates on a Sunday. So traffic impacts are not increasing, and as the Highway District's noted, those impacts can be mitigated, will be mitigated by the conditions. Light pollution was another concern expressed by some of the neighbors, and the church has already addressed that. Zach, if I could get that light photograph up. So this is obviously looking at the church at night. This is from Hayden Avenue, if I'm right about that. Okay, looking from Orchard to the probably northeast. And as you can see, the outside light fixtures have, well, you didn't see them before, but these are new. They're now downward directed. And what you see in the middle ground there is the lights from the car. That's not church lights, those are car lights. So the church has already addressed any light pollution or tried to address those concerns. They also, frankly, need to have some outdoor lighting at night just for safety and security purposes. So I think that's reaching a good middle ground there, good compromise. All the code violations that resulted in this hearing being continued have been addressed. At least I'm told they have all been fully resolved. And I believe that based on what the staff report shows and what I think the record proves is this application complies or checks all the boxes of the ordinance requirements for this CUP to be approved. We're not asking for any variances of any of those ordinance requirements. We're compatible with the existing area. We've been compatible for 25 years plus. And I don't think the county has been flooded with complaints about New Life Community Church and its Sunday services and associated activities on that property. The school, for the past several years, I think has increased some noise on a daily basis. One of the complaints was it generated some trash. Kids are noisy. I live across the street from Dalton Elementary, and I'm amazed at how much screaming happens with elementary school kids. But I probably shouldn't be. Kids are noisy. But that's just part of education, and they're only outside for a limited period of the day for recess and that sort of thing. So I don't know that it's, given the distances that are involved, that's incompatible with the neighborhood. One person's noise is another person's music, so. I think it's clear that all the public services and facilities are adequate and available. None of the agencies have any objection or concerns about this. I think the closest we got to a concern was Panhandle Health, and again, they were just saying you're getting close to capacity, and that was without taking into account their second septic system that they actually have. Proposals is not in conflict with the comp plan. I think the staff report indicates that. And we're not, again, changing the nature of the use that already exists. We are just accommodating the use that already exists for the education of the kids. And of course, we concur with staff's analysis and recommendation for approval. I think I will leave it there unless you have questions, and I'll reserve the rest of my time for rebuttal of any opposition comments that might come in.
When you indicate 250 people, does that include teachers and staff, both for the school and the church on a weekday?
I think that's just students, but Daniel Reinhardt can probably answer that question better than I can. I think that's just students. So, but yeah, with staff and teachers, the number might increase by another 20 or 30. So, not a big difference.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think Mr. Reinhardt wanted to address one of the more detailed opposition letters that came in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, you're next.
Well, hello, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is Daniel Reinhardt. I'm on staff at New Life Church, speaking on their behalf, and I'm at address 7096 West Lakeland Street in Rathdrum, Idaho. So, to speak to Mr. Porman's remarks about the school size, I actually just conferred with the head of school, Bill Stutzman, and he actually let me know that this year they actually didn't quite hit the 250 mark for enrollment, about 220, and then they have about the 30 extra staffers. So 250 is actually very close to an accurate number. Very briefly, I just want to address a letter that was written in the public comment from Gary James, one of our neighbors, and just a few things that we have addressed and some of the things that just kind of are what they are. The first one that says noise disturbances, loud kids and cars. We do have kids and cars at the church, so I'm not sure what to do about that. The gunfire, I conferred with our senior pastor. We've never approved, using of weapons on our property, and I personally have never heard gunfire, and neither has he in our time there. I've been there for just over 3.5 years, and Pastor Jeffrey has been there for about 5.5 years. Suspicious people living in the trees, boarding our property. I have heard of this, actually. And so one thing that we did quite a bit later than that original complaint was that we brought our trees up to about 5.5 feet. So now you can see under and see if there's anything happening underneath the trees. They were very full for some time, and there were people kind of sneaking around, which is a big part of the reason we put the lights up that we did. People living in their RVs, we have never approved people to live in an RV on the church property. However, one instance in the last year was a church member who parked on Orchard, but on our property, and said that he had permission to stay there, which he did not. So we swiftly reminded him that he did not have that permission. The bright security lights have already been addressed because of some of the crime that we've had at the church. In fact, one of our church vehicles was vandalized before we had put the new lights in, and all of the parts were stripped off of it. And so after that, we decided, and it was nothing, the timing was nothing short of predominant, because Kootenai Electric happened to have a slammin' rebate. So we did all of our building lights and our parking lot lights at that time. And then suspicious vehicles on the property, that from summer camps to overnight conferences. We do have cars that park in the back parking lot and the front parking lot, always with permission. And any cars that we do not recognize, we usually give them about a week before we make a phone call to say, hey, we're not sure who this belongs to, but we'll make a call to see if we can get something done. The increased crime I've already addressed, which is why we put the lights up. Suspicious activity at night on the south side of the building where it borders the property. We also have all-nighters. Our youth program, we do all-nighters at the church, and we very rarely go outside, but there are times that we do go outside for those special events, and so that could be a reference in what he's talking about. But we do our absolute best to be very respectful at an all-nighter and stay in the building and not run our sound system at all, so that we don't disturb our neighbors in that way. It references here trimming back the trees, which we have done. And then homeless people living in them, they failed to do that. Most of these things have been addressed. So that's actually all I wanted to address, was that some of the things in this particular public comment letter, we've attempted to be a good neighbor and take care of some of it. But then, as Mr. Poorman referenced, some of the nature of being a church and a school is we will have some loud kids and we will have cars in the parking lot. I have nothing further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Winkler?
Yeah. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
It's been good. I can use my time being cordial. My name's Jeffrey. I'm Winkler. Address. I put the church address because I wanted to be closer to the situation. But my physical address, because I don't live at the church, is 7095 West Lakeland Street in Rafter, Idaho, 83858. So I've been senior pastor of New Life Church I'll celebrate 5 years on November 6th, and we've inherited a mess, and churches are messy, sometimes by design, and that's just the nature of the business that we conduct, is we conduct hope to the hopeless. So our parking lot, our building, our facility is used for people who are hurting, people who are hungry, people who are down and out, young families with kids that show up to CCA or to a Sunday morning that might be hungry, or mom and dad might have had an argument that night, or they might be afraid because their grandmother has cancer. And our people are there to provide hope. And even those who are outside of our building, we see our parking lot used for respite for truck drivers. We see our parking lot used for Napa Auto Parts to exchange ideas or to exchange parts. We also see our parking lot used for safe Craigslist deals because it's open, it's public, it's in the light. We also see our parking lot used for handing off of children in split homes because it's safe, it's open, and it's lit. I want to address that we're New Life and CCA. We are about hope. Our vision is to know Jesus and to make him known, and that can get messy. We're not afraid of the mess. There's that tension where the Morrison Estates CCNRs require a single-family dwelling. We've never been a single-family dwelling. I don't know how we'll ever comply to be a single-family dwelling. All we can comply to be is ambassadors of Jesus and to continue to expand hope. And that's exactly what this CUP is for, is to help with the expansion of hope. Imagine if we were doing this hearing with 3 other hearings happening in the room. That's what's happening with these kids' education. Not only are the parents investing into private education because that's their choice, because we're living in America, but these kids, their education is it's being compromised because they have second graders and third graders speaking, and their teachers speaking, and there's wires crossed, and we want to make sure to invest the hope into our next generation, into our community, by staying alive and staying a light to those who are hopeless all around us. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last applicant representative is William Stutzman, who may wish to speak.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is William, or Bill Stutzman. My address is 1280 North Monticello Street, Post Falls, Idaho. I am the headmaster of Classical Christian Academy. It's an honor to be here tonight. I too want to extend thanks to Mr. Trevino for his staff report and the opportunity to be here to speak before you this evening. We began this process about 15 months ago, and we were in the midst of COVID as a new concern. As a school, we have been in existence now. We're heading into our 27th year. So we are not a new upstart school. We have a number of alumni and graduates in Kootenai County that are out serving, not only here, but around the country and around the world. And we've been very thankful to be able to educate classically, to be able to serve a number of families in this area. I want to make one correction. Mr. Reinhardt mentioned 220 students. That was about where we were, I would say, when we started this process 15 months ago. And with half-day kindergarten and half-day pre-K and full-time equivalents, that is a fair number. We grew a little during that year, and not all of our staff, which is about 25 folks, are full-time, or they're not all there at the same time. So I agree that is probably a fair representation. We did not hit 250 in our enrollment, but with staff, just to make that clarification since you asked. It is possible that at a time we have just over 250 people at the same time, but not on a consistent or daily basis as of yet. And as was mentioned, we fully intend, if we grow, to consult with Panhandle Health and the county to make sure that we're within the allowable requirements. Our staff have been cheerful. They've been really thankful to be able to educate during this pandemic. We have been able to be in person, and we've been able to take precautions and weather the storm, so to speak. Our parents have been very responsive. They've taken great responsibility, and I've worked with representatives of Panhandle Health during that time to remain healthy. But as you can imagine, the close quarters was a concern for us anyway. So we are excited about the possibility of these modular classrooms just to continue doing what we have done. And I want to mention that as a private school, as a classical school in particular, we are concerned with order and beauty and goodness and truth. Our kids are in uniforms, and we expect from them and teach them respect and honor, and that includes loving their neighbors as themselves. It's not that they are never loud or never screaming, but I know that our staff would step into a situation in which a child was uncontrollably making noise, because we do want to be sensitive. We do want to be kind with our neighbors. And community service is very important to us as well. It is one of the 5 distinguishing features of a graduate. We aim to graduate students that can exhibit biblical wisdom and Christ-likeness, that have the ability to exhibit great character, can achieve academically, but service is one of our 5 distinguishing features. And we ask of our students to be engaged in the community, to be serving and to be helping. And so we hope that continues. We are seeking on the long term, as you can imagine, a school more than a quarter of a century old, we hope to have our own home someday. So this is a transition time for us, and New Life has been a wonderful partner in that. They know, and we know, that God helping us, we'll have our own land someday and our own place to build a building, and that I'll get to stand before you again for that conditional use permit or whatever it might require. So again, just wanted to thank you. We want to thank our neighbors as well around us, and respect and honor them and their concerns, and we want to do our best to be great neighbors, not just now, but for the next quarter century and beyond. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Would you describe for me what one of these modular buildings contains? You know, how are they set up?
Yes, it's a very simple footprint. They are roughly 68 by 30, so there's a center divider down the middle of the building. If they're just a rectangular building, you'll get a 30 by 30 approximately classroom on each side. There are 2 doors so that each classroom has its exit there independently heated and cooled. 2 that would be facing each other would share an access ramp and decking so that students could enter and exit safely. And they would be, of course, meeting all of the standard occupancy. But a nice square classroom. Squares are great, efficient uses of space for classrooms. In the future, the application mentions a 4th portable possibly. That hasn't been constructed or conceived of yet, but they are quite customizable. You can put 3 classrooms that may be 20 by 30 in there, or you could divide it into office space. And we would like to ease the burden on New Life Church as well by being able to have administrative office space or other flexibility considerations, which we believe these buildings will allow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
All right, now we'll move on to those who are in favor. And I apologize for pronouncing people's names. Sometimes it's me and sometimes it's handwriting, though. Monica Schmoy? Shrug? I don't know. In favor, and it doesn't say whether you wish to speak or not. Monica? SC. Shrug? Shrug. Do you wish to speak? No. Okay, thank you. John? Say that again? Yeah. In favor, may wish to speak. Thank you. Jenna Bailey, thank you for your penmanship. In favor, may wish to speak. I don't wish to speak. Thank you. Samantha Krieg, in favor, may wish to speak. Matthew Gooch, in favor, does not wish to speak. Kara Claridge, in favor, may wish to speak.
I would just say that this has been an excellent...
Name and
yes.
address for the record, thanks.
Kara Claridge, 6733 North Rendezvous Drive from Coeur d'Alene. This has been an excellent school for our family. I have 5 children, and 3 of them are attending this school. It has been a very hopeful place to be. And as the headmaster mentioned, we are raising up godly children that are going far and wide into the world and making a difference. And we're super blessed to have it be here in our community. And I hope that something will work out here that's amiable to neighbors and the school. My observation is the New Life staff has had an excellent relationship with the classical staff, which is wonderful to see. So just in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Reed, in favor, does not wish to speak. Correct. Tom Hickox, in favor, does not wish to speak. Correct. Jamie Lee, in favor, does not wish to speak. Correct. Charisse Stutzman, in favor, does not wish to speak. Okay, anyone on Zoom who is in favor and would like to speak, you can either unmute yourself and give us your name and address, or raise your hand in the Zoom methodology. Zach's looking. Doesn't.
Corey, you mentioned you perhaps wanted to speak.
Yes, I'll be speaking in opposition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So it doesn't look like we have anybody there for that. Okay, so in opposition, we have Larry Flanagan, opposed, wishes to speak.
How come you got me first?
Well, you're on top.
not usually. My name is Larry Flanagan. I live 5100 West Hayden Avenue. Been there for about 16 years. But first, for everyone's benefit, I'd like to say that I'm 100% for Christian churches, maybe more. And I'm also 100% for Christian schools, as much or maybe more than a lot of people. I was actually on the board of a Christian school for 20 years in my past. Both my daughters and my grandchildren attended. Both my daughters were teachers there for quite a while, until the school closed down just recently. So I just want to let everybody know I'm not in opposition of the faith-based Christian education. I am certainly glad we have those facilities available to us now and in the future. I lived in this neighborhood for the last 16 years, enjoying the small farm, ranch type setting of all my neighbors. We have cows and horses and chickens and ducks and goats, and they love it as much as I do, but that's the kind of neighborhood that we live in. It's a single family, as stated, and all of the governing parts of our area, single family agricultural land, and it's supposed to be used for that, and the majority of it is, except for one parcel. My property is on the northeast corner of the Myers addition, and the property we're talking about is actually on the northwest corner, but the zone change will certainly affect us all in that one particular square mile of the prairie. And the adjacent property will be affected more quickly and in a more lasting way. Certainly that will be the case of the direct neighbors of the property. So you can surely understand their concerns, and because their concerns are our concerns as neighbors, I'm here to help try to explain our stance on the situation. Having a 10-acre parcel rezoned will, and my assumption was the 10-acre parcel directly behind the church was the parcel we were going to be talking about. And I see now that it's just the adjacent part of the 10-acre parcel that the church is on. But my concern would be, and the concern of others I'm sure would be, that in the future that 10 acres might be requested for a zone change as well, because it was mentioned that future expansion. And so that's part of the concern as well. So, and our small farm atmosphere will be changed and challenged again, I'm sure. All property owners in the Morrison estate know and abide by the covenants as long established without a problem. We've never had a problem before as far as the covenants are concerned or a rezoning request from anyone else. Other property owners, including myself, have been contacted, as I'm sure you can imagine, and approached by developers and speculators, although the horrible idea that most of us have if we live on property is that we'll have a 7-Eleven on every corner. And that's not the reason we purchase, maintain, and love where we live. We want it to stay the same. I know a lot of people might agree with that. We don't need another storage unit next to our cow pastures or our chicken houses. And we go for a walk in my neighborhood, and this is what happens. When you get back from a walk, you have a dozen eggs and a few ears of corn. As you visit with your neighbors, they say, "How's your garden doing?" "Oh, it's good. Have some corn." And that's the kind of neighborhood we have and enjoy. And I'm sure a lot of people would love to have that kind of neighborhood. In the last 5 years, though, I have personally, so I live on Hayden Avenue directly, and I've seen the traffic at least triple. I know someone said it hasn't changed. Well, Kootenai County's traffic has changed on every street, in every area, and every neighborhood. That's a fact. I worked for the highway department for 30 years. I noticed traffic. and it has tripled in the last 5 years at least. When you leave my house going east, the road of Hutter is backed up to the road of Orchard, and that's half a mile. We have traffic backed up a half a mile every day between 4 and 6. My wife and I can see it from our living room window. And we can also hear the collisions, because as the traffic has tripled, so has the accidents, both on the Hutter intersection and on the Myers intersection. So that should be a concern to everyone involved.
That was your time's up
Oh, no,
buzzer.
I'm just getting started.
Uh-oh.
I'm not even a preacher.
I'll share my pulpit.
No. Do I have to stop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Larry Flanagan. Oh, sorry. Gary Berger, opposed, wishes to speak.
I wish to speak.
My name is Gary Berger, and I live at 5715 West Orchard Avenue. And I'm kind of going on the basics again, some things you heard. And I'm like Larry, I'm adamant about, we love Christian churches and schools, and we're both involved in them. Not that particular one, but we're definitely not against them. I don't think anybody in our neighborhood is. But to go to the basics of why we're there, that's what I want to do here, and it's short, but I think sweet. I do happen to be the president of Morrison Estates, homeowners in the Water Association, have been for about, 15 years. Once you get it, they'll never fire you. So, and again, I want to thank you for listening to us and hearing our concerns. It's important to us. First, our CCNRs clearly state we are zoned for agricultural, suitable for farming and agricultural pursuits, and that's in CCRs 9.61. Second, any dwelling must be for a single-family housing only. Number 3, CCNRs. The exception has been New Life Church, which has been fully accepted as a church, and it's there. We have no objections to them being a church. It was built before most of the neighborhood homes were completed, as stated, and even though the bylaws were in place at that time, how it got in, I don't know. That's way back, and it happened, and there it is. But they should have been following guidelines. It would not have been there. As stated, let's see, before most of the neighborhood homes were completed, as stated, our stand is with the proposed change of a New Life that will change our ranching and farming community to a much higher traffic and noise, and it has. I've been there for 25 years, and it is noisier, and there is more traffic. You can't deny it. And not just because of growth, but we can see the corners, we see them lit up at night. There is definitely more accidents. We see speeders go through. There's a lot more going on than ever was before. This is part of it, not all of it. This is not what our neighbors invested in. My family has lived on Orchard Avenue for almost 25 years, and we have fully enjoyed the rural lifestyle. Many of our neighbors have tractors, fields, barns, orchards, horses, and cows, to list a few. And the roads Harvest and Orchard have been less traveled, and not uncommon to see bike riders, joggers, walkers, as well as horseback riders. It's common to see that at any given time, because it's a slow-moving road. It almost dead ends in the end, but there's a way out on both them roads. But it's picking up, and people are looking for shortcuts. And so now the traffic's picking up. I think that'll happen no matter what. My family members and grandkids also, many friends have enjoyed our rural space and our slow traffic area. Again, it's increased because of Hayden and Meyer are very busy. We also know that future plans on growth at Real Life or at New Life will bring in yet more traffic, and our quiet roads will be a thing of the past. Once it's gone, it's gone. We won't have that any longer. We know that a school does not fit into our big ag lifestyle, but will bring other attempts to split and develop other properties. And as Larry pointed out, we have been hit up on splitting into fives, also with other businesses, which we really want no part of. And everybody's on our board is unanimous. We all feel the same way. We are standing on a premise that we residents have invested, built our properties, and have chosen to raise our families here. We live here, pay our taxes here, enjoy our life in our great neighborhood. whereas the New Life folks do not reside here. But at the end of the day, they check out, they go home to their neighborhood. But they may have the ability to change our way of life, and yet nobody's invested here and lives here. So we feel we're kind of victims to something that we never bargained for. We should have a say on why we're there and the lifestyle that we lead. And we are worried about the expansion in undeveloped sites. It is a main concern. What happens after this? What's the next step? There's 2 more properties there, and one was it was a house. They did have a home there. And what happened with that was they converted to a school, and unbeknownst to anybody, and there we have a school. And so I think that's something we're going to deal with at another time, which this one, if it passes, I think that one's coming. And then there's 10 acres of undeveloped land. We don't know where it's going to go, but it will open access on the back, on the south of the property from the church. And again, that little road that we have that's so good for horseback riders and joggers and walkers will probably be gone. So anyway, that's what I have to say. That's all. Thank you very much.
Patrick Malloy, opposed, wishes to speak.
My name's Pat Malloy. I live on 5693 West Harvest in Rathdrum, which is Morrison Estates. And I'm opposed to the conditional use permit requested by New Life Community Church and Classical Christian Academy. The Morrison Estates Homeowners Water Association and the bylaws were executed in 1984, which was prior to the purchase of the 10.5 acre parcel of land owned by New Life Community Church. The original bylaws were due to expire in 2009, and the bylaws were restated on March 19th of 2009. And the purpose was to provide and enforce the CC&Rs of Morrison Estates. I moved to Morrison Estates in 2009 because of the CC&Rs, because the CC&Rs provided an agricultural setting with 10-acre lots and a rural atmosphere, which was nice and quiet. And I'm not opposed to the church, but I am opposed to the addition of approximately 250 students on Monday through Friday that will definitely increase the traffic through and around the 320-acre Morrison Estates. Allegedly, it won't, but I know that people will start cutting through and using Orchard, which is not in my backyard. I live on Harvest. Harvest and Orchard are bounded by Meyer and Hutter, which in effect makes them very little used at this juncture. It is picking up because people have found a shortcut around the congestion at Meyer and Hayden and Hutter and Hayden, so now they're taking a shortcut through Harvest or Orchard, so that'll happen. It's my understanding that currently the 250 students are not on site at the church, or so I was told anyway. Church services on Sundays do not and have not caused a problem over the years with me or with Morrison Estates. The use of the property will definitely be changed with the addition of the school. The addition of the school will adversely affect those who live in Morrison Estates, not those who commute to preach, teach, or attend class and then return to their residences of choice. I'm not opposed to growth or churches or schools, but I feel that they should occur in areas that are properly zoned and not in an area where the applicant is well aware of the CC&Rs. New Life Community Church was and has been aware of these CC&Rs since they purchased their property. Approval of New Life's CUP request will negatively impact the rural and agricultural atmosphere of all the residents of Morrison Estates and clearly violates the covenants or CC&Rs that New Life Community Church accepted when they purchased their parcel of land. So I appreciate the opportunity and thank you.
Thank you. Keith Larson, opposed, may wish to speak.
Good evening. My name is Keith Larson. I live at 9292 North Meyer Road, Post Falls, 83854. My property is on the borderline of all three of their properties. Or I border them, they border me. I'm not real good at this speech, but I'll try my best. I've been there for 35 years. I was one of the first ones to build out there. It was nice and quiet. We had a nice dirt road out there. Nobody hardly ever come by. Now it's like a freeway up and down through there. I do want to address their emergency road that they say is emergency road. During the school year, that road is used as a shortcut to go in and out of the church. It raises a lot of dust. And like they say, we got a lot of traffic in there and getting and people coming out on Meyer. Meyer gets backed up to past Orchard in the nightly traffic and going on. I don't really have an opposition to the church. We've gotten along pretty good all these years. I do have an opposition to the school. Some of my fears are we have all these children out there going to school. We're going to have older ones that are going to have cars. We're going to have people that are going to be milling around. I'm afraid. What I don't want to see is having kids come on my property, maybe getting hurt, and the parents and the church wanting to sue me if they get hurt on my property. So there's no buffer there on my east side and my north side of my property from them. And that's some of my biggest concerns. And I go along with what all has been said so far, so I'll just leave it at that. I want to thank you for my opportunity.
Thank you. Patricia Brewer? Yes. Opposed, may wish to speak.
Yes. I'm Patricia Brewer, and I live at 5974 West Orchard, which is I'm one of the ones that are within the 500 feet area of this proposal. So I got one of the initial notices, my husband and I. And we've been there since 1992. And most of those that did get the notification have been there a long time. And some of the rest of them also. And we do not support this application request because I do not feel that it fits into the covenants and bylaws of the Morrison Estates. It's an agricultural, single-family neighborhood. And allowing New Life Church to lease their land to Classical Christian Academy does not fit into those covenants. A school will add traffic and noise to our neighborhood. And they also worry about the further development requests that they'll probably for their other two parcels. And I noticed in one of the presentations it said that notice all the vacant land around. Well, that's not vacant land around. That's land that is used for pasture. It's used to raise hay. It's used, my neighbor behind me, Warren Olson, has a herd of black Angus that he runs on my pasture as well as his. So that land is used for many various things. So it's not just vacant land. And once you lose that agricultural land, you don't get it back. It no longer raises livestock or hay. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't. Thank you. And now we'll go to Zoom for others who may be in opposition and wish to speak.
Cora, would you like to start? I have 3 people on Zoom and we can start with you.
Sure, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Name and address for the record.
Cora Whitney. My address is 601 East Front Avenue, Suite 304, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83814.
Okay, go.
Thank you. I submit the following comments on behalf of the Morrison Estates Homeowners Water Association in opposition to the request by New Life Community Church and Classic Christian Academy for a conditional use permit to expand their place of worship and school in an agricultural zone. The church's proposed CUP is not compatible with existing homes in the Morrison Estates neighborhood or with the natural beauty and characteristics of the area. It would bring more traffic, as we've discussed here tonight, and bring an influx of people to a quiet, rural, beautiful neighborhood environment. The CCNRs have been discussed at length tonight, and I bring them up once again, specifically the Second Amendment, recorded in January of 1982, says that only parcels 26 through 31 may be used for off-site manufactured residences. The portable classrooms that are manufactured off-site are in violation of the Second Amendment. This shows that the church is not planning to comply with the Second Amendment or with the CCNRs that encumber its property. Further, the church has not mitigated the negative environment and negative social impact the expansion of the place of worship and school would bring to the community. This is demonstrated by the 14 comments showing lack of community support. The association is adamantly against the expansion of use, and that's been ignored by the church, and the church has ignored the surrounding property owners' concerns about the expansion. This negative attitude by the church has brought about a negative impact on the community due to the church's own actions and inactions. Lastly, the expansion of use by the church would unduly stress the resources of the association and the surrounding neighborhood. There is a tap into the association's well. The association is small with limited resources, and the church really hasn't addressed that additional stress and burden other than to state it won't have it. The water services of the association are not adequate to support an expansion of use, which is contemplated by the conditional use permit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Zach, anybody else?
Gary James, would you like to speak? And you're muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself if you would want to speak.
There we go. Can you hear me, Zach?
Yes.
All right. Can you hear me, Madam Speaker?
I certainly can.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity to be here. As their previous attorney spoke,
Name and address for the record, please.
Oh, my name is Gary James. I'm adjacent to the property. I live at 5943 West Orchard Avenue in Rathdrum. As their attorney addressed earlier, I sent in a pretty detailed letter. I have something I'll just read here real quick. I am in opposition to the conditional use permit and do not support the expansion. I obviously, as a Christian man, support the church and the mission, but not the expansion of the school. I'm an Idaho native and Native American who moved my family in 2015 from living in our local cities to our current home where we can live out our American dream on land, live quietly, and participate in an agricultural environment. Our new residents gave our family a sense of peace. As I worked 17 years serving our city as a local community, as a police officer in our local community. Prior to moving to this current location, our family had to deal with on multiple occasions threats from neighbors that did not like law enforcement or support them. We lived under continual stress and confrontation from these neighbors, and that is why we started looking for property. When our family located our current residence located next to the church, we were instantly overwhelmed with joy, as this is a residence that is surrounded by many home and 10-acre parcels. The neighbors have been very friendly, caring, and helpful, and I can see just how important this agricultural community is to me and my family. The mountain views, quiet days, nights, and light traffic on the roadway when we moved in and surrounding area gave us much peace and a sense of security. In 2019, that obviously changed when I observed kids multiple days through the week and encountered some other issues that were named in my previous letter. Those issues were, transients on the property. The church did cut those, which I was very appreciative of. It was after the fact. The lighting issues they were talking about, I dealt with that for a long time. Certainly I understand the security issue of it, of having the lights. But I live 196 yards from the church, and when they have those security lights on, they lit up my yard almost like a football field. And I made numerous contacts with them and eventually made contact with the individual who was responsible for them. And that was multiple times, and I even brought it up. Mr. Winkler, Pastor Jeffrey Winkler, requested a personal meeting, which we did have. It was a good meeting. He said that they would take care of that back in, I believe it was April or May when we met, and it was literally just taken care of, I believe, the 1st of August. I am appreciative that they did do that, but like I told him, I'm still opposed. Adding a school and potential much larger schools in the future would bring heavy traffic not only to Hayden Avenue, Meyer Road, Hutter Road, and Orchard Avenue. It would bring increased noise, not to mention that undoubtedly bring future problems to our quiet association. Right now, the ingress and egress of Hayden Avenue and Meyer Road can barely handle the mass influx of the traffic as it is with the current road construction going on. Daily traffic already backs up from both Meyer and Hayden in both directions, making wait times to enter the roadway off Orchard very difficult and tedious. The traffic situation is no different at the intersection down the road at Hutter and Hayden. Our neighborhood roadway is now forced to deal with the increased traffic and impatient drivers traveling down our roadways at high rates of speed. I would also like to note over the last 5 years, traffic accidents and fatalities have increased as mentioned in these intersections. An approved conditional use permit to incorporate a school at New Life Church will only add to the traffic issues our neighborhood and surrounding areas already dealing with. There should be a responsibility to slow the growth as our current infrastructure area can barely handle what we have now. I would like to note that a school going next to my residence would significantly decrease the value of my property. The surrounding area has a multiplicity of both private and public schools already to choose from. I want the requesting parties in the community and people to understand, we are the ones that live there, they don't. We are the ones that have to deal with the increased traffic and noise, they don't. So I'm asking that New Life's conditional use permit not be denied in this agriculture area based on our bylaws and to be able to protect what we have, which I would call a small slice of the American dream. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Zach, anybody else?
Pixel 3 is the username. Would you like to speak? You'll have to unmute yourself. Pixel 3, if you'd like to speak, you'll have to unmute yourself and let us know.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's everyone on Zoom.
Okay. Applicant rebuttal.
Thank you again for the time, and I hate to do this, but they're paying me to. I've been practicing land use and real estate law for about 30 years, and I appreciate and I'm sympathetic to this stuff can get confusing sometimes, and perceptions are difficult to change. You know, once somebody's got an idea in their head, well, they get hard of hearing sometimes when you try to explain the reality of a situation. And I've heard a lot of misperceptions from the opposition tonight, and I get it, I really do. It's understandable, and you probably know as well as anybody that when the public gets involved in a process like conditional use permits, zone changes, other land use matters, they can often be confused about what is the actual question that's before Madam Hearing Examiner and that will go to the county commissioners. And I think we're dealing with part of that here. I heard people say They're opposed to this because it will add a school to the existing property. It'll create traffic impacts because it'll bring another 250 people to that property every weekday. That it will have water impacts because it's adding a school to this property. And I'm sure, as you know, that's just not the case. The school is there. This conditional use permit does not add a school. It doesn't add students. It doesn't add traffic impacts. It just gives the existing school a better place to operate on the existing parcel. It relieves the overcrowding that is currently the school's having to deal with, putting a square peg into a round hole. So yeah, you and I get that. I understand why the public might be confused about it, but obviously this conditional use permit, if approved, doesn't add a school. It just adds classrooms for the existing school. Lots of objections based on CC&Rs. You've heard reference to the covenants, and I don't know that the covenants are actually in the record that they're referring to. Am I mistaken about that?
I believe they are in the record.
Okay.
I do have them here if you'd like. As a point of reference, I know you can't do them now, but
Oh, I've got them too. I just want to make sure they're in the record for now.
Shall we put them in as a exhibit for this evening?
If they aren't already in the record, I can.
Which ones
Okay,
do
I
you
didn't
have,
see
though?
them in
So
my,
I have the Second Amendment to the Conditions, Covenants, and Restrictions of Morrison Estates. That was from 1991, and then I have the amended version from 2009. And both of these have been referred to. To my knowledge, these are all that pertain to these parcels. These are all that I am aware of. Would you like me to? I
yeah,
can
let's
deliver
enter
to you
them
right now.
in as an exhibit.
1001?
Yes.
And are the bylaws of Morrison Estates also in the record?
Yes, I believe those are part of the recorded documents. Yes, with the CC&Rs from 2009, those restated bylaws were recorded in 2010.
All right, perfect. And Ms. Woodard, if you have the restated bylaws handy there, you'll see right in section 2 on that first page, it refers to the association's purpose to provide and enforce covenants, conditions, and restrictions dated March 19th, 2001, and those are the covenants that you now have in the record. Those March 19, 2009 CC&Rs superseded the former covenants and the 2 amendments. So references to the second amendment to the CC&Rs, that second amendment has been superseded by this 2009 version. That's what the restated bylaws say. So we only need to concern ourselves with the 2009 CC&Rs, instrument number 220593000. And those covenants, which are also in the record now, were adopted obviously in 2009. All the prior CC&Rs were revoked. And of course, the church building and uses all pre-existed the 2009 covenants. The 2009 covenants refer to single-family housing only. Well, the church is not a single-family residence, never was, never will be. The 2009 CC&Rs refer to agricultural type uses. We don't have any of that. Quite simply, Madam Hearing Examiner, the 2009 covenants are irrelevant to your analysis and recommendation because of when they were adopted and how they superseded and replaced all prior covenants. I'm sure that's an issue county legal staff would be happy to weigh in on if you have any questions about that. But that's my conclusion. And again, I understand how the public might misunderstand these legal documents, but that's why people like me exist. Really same answer with respect to traffic. The traffic impacts from a school already exist, and they can continue with or without this conditional use permit. The school can stay at New Life Community Church without a conditional use permit. The CUP just allows the classrooms to come in. So I'm sorry to disappoint people with that information, but it is the facts and the truth, and I need to make a record about that. I meant it when I said it's my privilege to represent these clients. You don't often get to represent, in land use matters anyway, people who are so sensitive to their neighbors and wanting to be friendly and supportive and welcoming. Most of my, frankly, real estate development clients have one motivation, and that's to make a lot of money and then disappear with it. That's not this client. They're here for the long haul. They care about the neighborhood. And I am absolutely convinced, whatever condition you might recommend that's not already in the staff report, if you think it's appropriate to address the concerns of the neighbors, the church would be happy to comply. The school would be happy to comply. They don't want to make enemies. They're in the business of, as the pastor said, preaching Jesus and everything he stood for. And conflict is not part of that. So my client welcomes the concerns and the criticisms they've heard tonight and be happy to address those. And unless you have questions, I'll sit down and shut up.
Could you show me where you're going to put the fence on that private road that has been made as part of one of the conditions?
Go back to the aerial again. Maybe three. The access road to Meyer.
Yeah.
I must have been scribbling when somebody said something about a fence.
Am I nutty?
I can speak to it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad Zach knows what you're talking about.
There are a few things I'd like to address.
Oh, great.
If you have more questions for him, I could just address this issue first.
Okay.
So what you're referring to is one of the recommended conditions of approval in the staff report, requiring that the driveway providing access from Meyer Road be gated and not used by the facility except as a secondary egress in the event of an emergency. That condition was directly in response to two things. One, concerns raised by members of the public about it crossing land, and two, the fact that Post Falls Highway District approved approach permits for 2 locations along this public road. This was not evaluated by Post Falls Highway District, and although staff does acknowledge that it may be useful in the event of an emergency, it is not staff's understanding that the applicant intends to use it as a primary access. And so to avoid any potential misuse of that approach, staff is recommending that a gate be installed on the subject property.
Okay. Thank you. Excellent.
Was that everything you had for Scott?
Yeah, do any other members of the applicant's representative wish to speak in rebuttal to any testimony heard here?
Sorry, one quick comment about the diffusers for the lights. Those were just back order because everything's on back order. So that wasn't a scoff or something intentional that we could delay it as long as possible. We do have, my wife and I did live there for 4 years, so we were neighbors, we were part of the community. We do have some ag, we have we have kids that have a garden back there on the back, 10 acres. And so those would be the only 2 things that I would comment to. And like I've told the board, I've expressed to the board, we're really stewards of this property. The property really belongs to God, and he'll dictate how that's used or not through the direction of our leadership and through the direction of our board. I can't say what will or will not be there. I'm just a steward, and so my time there doesn't have a designated end point, and so to give anything in an assurance of what any of the property would be used for could put New Life and myself in a position to disobey any direction from the Lord, and we're just not willing to be put in that position. Those would be the comments that I would make.
Okay, thank you. Zach, do you have anything else you'd like to?
I do briefly. I want to address a few things for the benefit of the public. First off, I must say, just as staff, this has been pleasure dealing with the people of the public, and I appreciate the engagement that has been consistent throughout the process. I think that's important, and it certainly made the staff report easier to write and the use easier to evaluate. And I want to address some of the issues that have been raised. And then finally, I want to address the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which is detailed in the staff report, but just for the benefit of the public. So first off, the CC&Rs and bylaws. I was aware of those documents. They are now going to be added to the record. My sincere apologies if they were not already in the record. Thankfully, it sounds like most members of the public are already well aware of those CC&Rs, but they will be added to the record so anyone will be able to access them. Importantly, a member of the public, a few of them, did mention the restriction in question being that any dwelling must be for a single-family residence only, and that is the only restriction that I have seen that would determine use on these parcels. And because the church itself is not a dwelling, staff's feeling is that there hasn't been a direct conflict with CC&Rs in what has been proposed. I've addressed emergency access. That is something that I think is important, not only for addressing public comment, but also making sure that the impacts to the public road system are predictable. Post Falls Highway District, as mentioned in my previous presentation, will want the traffic operational analysis to be repeated in 5 years. That is one of the conditions of approval. And so at that time, there may be changes to what is required, but for now, they have approved those two approaches. The other thing I want to get to that was mentioned a number of times is the capacity of the school. Where I got the 250 number was from the narrative provided by the applicant. And I want to address this because it's important to make sure that the conditions accurately reflect what the intent is and what is going to happen on site. So this was the table that was provided as part of the narrative showing the maximum capacity of the entire property for various uses. It breaks it down by the church and then by the school daytime use. As you can see, there will be no overlap. School will not be used on Saturdays or Sundays. But this was the maximum capacity that was provided to me, and it didn't indicate that that was only students. It is important that that be clarified by the applicant, because one of the conditions of approval is that the days of operation and maximum capacity be limited to those proposed by the applicant in this exhibit, in this narrative. And I want to be sure that going forward, if this is approved, that there is no question about what acceptable capacity is. This is also important because Panhandle Health District directly evaluated capacity as part of their review, and they did say that it appears to be at or near capacity. And they also said, I wanted to document, this is quoting from Panhandle Health District, I wanted to document with my CUP response that future additions / expansions or adding additional students above the 250 they currently have may exceed their allowable capacity. And so it does appear that Panhandle Health District mentioned 250 students. So it doesn't seem that it would be precluded by their requirements to potentially have 250 students and staff, but that would just need to be reflected in a recommendation if this were to be approved. So I just wanted to clarify that. And finally, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act is important because it is a law that governs land use decisions when a religious element is involved. And as has been made clear, this is a facility affiliated with the Christian religion. And so RLUIPA, which is the acronym for that act, is relevant. And basically, that law
requires that land uses be evaluated without consideration to the specific religious denomination of the applicant, and with consideration to making sure that if the use is denied, there is an interest, and I believe they use the term compelling governmental interest, that would justify such a denial. Now, it has been mentioned that the parcel has been used for a church, and even if this request were to be denied, due to the non-conforming nature of the church, it could still be used for the church. This is particularly related to the expansion of that religious private school from a spatial standpoint. But that act is detailed in the staff report, and I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that for the record. And if you have any questions about that, I can add, but it looks like Director Callahan may want to add something.
Just one small point. Everything Zach said is spot on, but we need the audience to know that's federal law.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And that is all I wanted to add, unless you have questions.
I don't. Thank you.
One short comment, if there's time.
I don't think you guys used up your rebuttal time period, so sure.
Very quickly, to respect the time of everybody here, in reference to one of the comments made that the church was not interested in making some kind of amends since since the proceeding has started. In fact, when the first public comments were made known to us, the first thing that we did is that we called a meeting with the HOA, or excuse me, the Morrison Estates board. Said, okay, we realized we've stepped on some toes here, so what can we do from here? So I just wanted to communicate that our heart is, in fact, to play ball. We want to be good neighbors, and Pastor Jeffrey, the senior pastor, and myself, we did inherit a bit of a mess, and most of these members have been here so much longer than we have. And so we want to do the very best we can to make up for some of that time. And then on a separate issue regarding the other parcel where the residence is located, owned by the church, is that all of the paperwork has been submitted and been approved via email, but I don't know if that's been officially pushed through as far as the permit violations. Just putting the cart before the horse, so we made the changes and the fixes so that it is now going to be approved as a residence, and we're not going to move forward at this time with any changes on that. So that was it.
Okay, thank you very much. And before I close, I'd just like to say that I'm so appreciative that in this time of our country being so divided and people not being happy with each other, that this was a very gracious meeting. Thank you for your attention and your politeness. This hearing is adjourned for conditional use permit CUP 20-0009.